Have any of you wondered how it might be possible to send a coordinated emergency message across the world? I know that I have. So today we're going to talk about the Military Auxiliary Radio System, or MARS, which is a United States Department of Defense program operated by the U.S. Army and Air Force. It consists of volunteer licensed amateur radio operators who provide auxiliary emergency communication support to military and federal entities when traditional communication systems fail, such as during natural disasters or cyber-denied environments. MARS is not a public emergency alert system like the United States Emergency Alert System, or EAS. Instead, it supports military and government communications, including morale, welfare, and official traffic for armed forces and authorized civilian personnel worldwide. It generally facilitates emergency communications for military operations, such as phone patches for military aircraft, but does not generally broadcast public alerts. MARS operates in both the United States and globally. That could be quite handy. It's set up according to FEMA regions in the U.S. and is primarily a United States program, but it does support Department of Defense missions worldwide. It's different from other international systems, like the Global Maritime Distress and Safety System, which is for waterways and boats, or COSPA SARSAT, which is government-run by Canada, France, Russia, and the United States. It detects beacon signals on land, sea, and air. They don't have the ability to transmit alerts or messages to citizens worldwide, which brings us back to MARS. On its webpage, among other things, the MARS mission is to provide contingency communications in support of the Department of Defense and service communication requirements, provide communication support to civil authorities, and assist in effecting normal communications under emergency conditions. The next thing I looked at is whether the MARS system is capable of providing worldwide emergency alerts. And guess what? The answer is yes, it is. But the plot always thickens if we look deep enough. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or CPB, receives federal funding to support public broadcasting stations like those affiliated with PBS and NPR, which recently had a lot of their funding cut. The CPB doesn't directly fund or manage the emergency alert system, but many public broadcasting stations, which receive CPB funding, are participants in the emergency alert system. As part of their FCC licensing requirements, these public broadcast stations must maintain equipment to broadcast emergency alerts when activated by federal or state authorities. So, while there's no money changing hands, the emergency broadcast system really relies on these stations for the equipment and operational functions. As it turns out, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is in severe financial trouble and has announced it will shut down operations due to the loss of federal funding. Their plan is to eliminate most of its approximately 100 staff by September 30th. A small transition team will remain through January next year to manage the closure. Congress rescinded $1.1 billion in July over 2026 and 2027. Additionally, the 2026 spending bill didn't include any money for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for the first time in over 50 years. When CPB goes down, it will affect about 1,500 local public radio and television stations, including PBS and NPR affiliates. The loss of local stations could create gaps in emergency alert systems if those stations go off-air. Now, there are other stations, and if all of these 1,500 publicly funded stations went down, we'd still have 92% of the stations broadcasting for the emergency alert system. Here's the problem. The ones at risk of going down are in rural areas where it's harder for small stations to survive and the area isn't serviced by larger stations. So, this closing could cause significant coverage gaps, making a national alert impossible. Well, guess what? I did some research, and the MARS, or Military Auxiliary Radio System, can be used for a coordinated worldwide announcement with some modifications. MARS uses high-frequency HF radio, very high-frequency VHF, ultra-high-frequency UHF, and digital modes to provide reliable, long-range communications in the most remote places. MARS stations are already deployed across the U.S. and support DoD missions worldwide, with operators trained to handle emergency traffic. Existing amateur radio networks, which MARS uses, also have a global presence. So MARS could be repurposed, with the cooperation of world leaders, to broadcast a single, unified message to populations equipped with basic radio receivers, which are widely available worldwide. But MARS is not currently designed for mass public dissemination to our knowledge, so adaptations would be needed but are possible. MARS would need a global network of high-power HF transmitters to ensure coverage across continents. Current MARS stations, numbering in the hundreds in the U.S., would need to be supplemented by reactivating or integrating with allied nations' military and amateur radio networks. Temporary high-power transmitters, like those used in military operations, could also be deployed in strategic locations to maximize the signal reach. Also, a standardized, internationally agreed-upon frequency in the HF band would be designated for the alert. This would require global cooperation achievable with world leaders' authorization using International Telecommunication Union protocols. MARS would need a centralized command to create and transmit a clear, multilingual alert message in voice and digital formats. Operators would use existing MARS protocols to relay the message through a network of repeaters and stations. The message could be received on standard AM, FM, or shortwave radios, which billions of people own, especially in developing regions. Most households globally have access to battery-powered radios. Governments would need to instruct citizens to tune to the designated frequency via prior campaigns or word of mouth. In remote areas, community radio posts or military outposts could distribute receivers or act as relay points. MARS stations already use backup power, including generators and solar panels for off-grid operation. If there is a power shutdown, scaling would require deploying portable power sources to ensure stations remain operational. So don't worry, we won't be left without an EBS system. Another way that the MARS system could be used for a worldwide message is via satellite. Thousands of satellites like Starlink to enhance global reach is feasible with current technology, but it would also require modifications, coordination, and infrastructure adaptations. MARS is not natively compatible with satellite-based internet systems like Starlink, but by leveraging existing satellite and radio technologies, a hybrid system could be created to broadcast a global alert. Further, Starlink could use internet service providers as relays that delivers broadband internet signals which connect to home Wi-Fi networks. If MARS repurposes Starlink to broadcast an emergency alert, the signal could be sent as a low-bandwidth data packet to ISP infrastructure, which could then relay it to homes via existing internet connections to devices like Fire Sticks, Roku players, or smart TVs. However, many ISPs' current infrastructure are fiber, cable, or DSL, so they would need to be adapted with receivers to capture the signal. This could also be done with military satellite uplinks, but Starlink currently has 8,075 satellites deployed and operational. So I found this quite interesting. There is a way for this system to send the same message right into homes across the world with the proper modifications. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think we will ever have a need for a global emergency broadcast system? Is the staff reduction of September 13th significant in any way? Time will tell. But don't forget to subscribe and please be sure to ring the bell because the channel is suppressed and isn't served up like a non-suppressed channels are, so we have to work much harder at it. Sharing helps beat the system, and hopefully we can soon be living in a world of true free speech across the world.